this great country where I think we've been too stringent, where we need to get people back and moving, and that is schools. I'm joined now by Jack McGuire, who's the State Secretary of the Teachers Professional Association, joins me from Brisbane. Thanks for joining us again, Jack. Look, I find this astonishing. We've had consistent high-level medical advice that schools should be open, yet in Queensland, Victoria and New South Wales, the state systems at least have shunned students. And they're only just starting to talk about getting them back one day a week in New South Wales. This is over the top, isn't it?
Well, look, I think if you want to try and cut through the quaff and work out what's actually happening in this country, I look to the politicians. I'd support our teachers going back into the classroom and kids going back to school when politicians start going back to Parliament.
Well, they're going back to Parliament this month, or next month anyway, but the point here is that all of the scientific and medical evidence shows that children not only very seldom get the coronavirus, but they don't, when they do get it, they have very mild symptoms, and on all the evidence, they're not passing it on and spreading it around the way they have done with perhaps the flu or the common cold. So the evidence is that it's better to have kids in that controlled environment. And obviously, if there are vulnerable teachers, the elderly teachers or people with medical conditions, other arrangements should be made for them.
Yeah, look, I think that's sensible. There is conflicting evidence, though, about how contagious kids can be. So in those circumstances, we're taking all sorts of measures to
Where's the conflicting evidence?
Well, I mean, any number of reports, or not reports, but historical research studies have shown that kids in schools are viral hotspots necessarily.
Well, as I said, we know they spread the flu. We know they spread the flu. We know they spread the common cold. But I'm saying all the medical evidence so far and all the experience we see around us is that with the COVID-19, they don't spread it.
Well, look, I don't think we've seen enough of it yet. We haven't seen enough children. You'd know yourself, children do not practice any sort of social distancing or the same level of hygiene that adults do. Well,
I can tell you they're learning. They certainly do it. But, yeah, it's a management issue, and the schools have been onto that. And I have a couple of kids at school myself, and they're certainly picking up some of that. Let me just share you a little comment, a little part of my interview yesterday with the South Australian Health Minister. They've kept their kids at school the whole way through. Here's what he's got to say about it.
There is no health advice to suggest that schools need to close. We've had millions of school days so far this year. We haven't had any case of a student infecting a teacher, nor a student to a student. We've only had one case of a teacher infecting a student. So particularly in the context of ongoing low prevalence in the community, we believe it's very safe for children to go to school. And we believe in education. We believe that children have the right to be at school.
Stephen Wade there, the Health Minister in South Australia. There's your live example. That's a real case example of what's going on. Now, of course, you'd want to make sure there's careful measures in place to, as I said, to protect vulnerable teachers. But doesn't this just demonstrate that all kids around the country should be at school?
Well, look, certainly from a student perspective, being at school would help. We've seen all sorts of problems in the rollout of online learning in Queensland. We've seen the very first day they tried to roll out online learning, the system crashed. I mean, I think that's a bit of a schoolboy error to not even try and load test the system. In fact, we even wrote to the Premier and the Education Minister to try and highlight some of these issues that came from teachers, their frontline staff. Even more egregious, this was a month ago that we wrote to them, and only yesterday we heard a reply from the Premier who said, we acknowledge your letter and we've passed it on to the Education Minister who had already been looped in the first place.
Yeah, I understand they had those problems. We mentioned them the other day. They want to get those right. Good way to not have to worry about them, though, is to get the kids back at school. But we'll see what happens there. I appreciate your time, Jack.
Thanks, Chris.
Jack McGuire there, who's the State Secretary for the Teachers Professional Association in Brisbane. Now, I've been saying this all along, of course, because the Chief Medical Officer has been saying it. Kids should be in school. South Australia provides all the evidence you need, surely. After the break, we'll cut to the chase with Gemma Tognini.
You're watching.